With me this week is our special guest, Phil Ferguson.
Hello, everybody.
From the Phil Ferguson Show that features, among other things, discussions around skepticism and finance. How are you doing today, Phil?
I'm good. I'm a little bit of a shock because I've never seen the show. I've always heard the show. So it was nice to see that really cool graphic. And that was really well done. Whoever did that, congratulations.
Thank
you did a nice job.
A couple quick announcements. The Atheist Experience is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin. That's a Texas nonprofit educational foundation dedicated to promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. You can catch us live every Sunday on YouTube and comment on this week's show at the current show thread supplied for every episode at our blog at freethoughtblogs.com/AXB. You can also write to the show at tv@atheist-community.org, or you can join the Atheist Experience official discussion group on Facebook. If you enjoy this show, you may also enjoy our other ACA podcast, The Nonprofits, which airs on the first and third Wednesday nights of each month. Links are available at the Atheist Experience website. And also, just to note that after the show, the cast and crew go out to dinner at Star of India restaurant, located at 2900 West Anderson Lane. We arrive a little after 6 p.m., and dinner is a social event open to atheists and atheist-friendly people.
And that's in what, like 20 minutes? Because I'm getting hungry.
No, we have an hour going on here, hour and a half. So let me go ahead then and first,
talk about Phil.
We were going to talk about Phil. I have some stuff, but do you have anything you want to start out with?
Well, anyone who sees me and wonders who, I can swear, right?
You can, yeah.
Okay, whoever the heck Phil Ferguson is, you can go listen to my cleverly titled show, The Phil Ferguson Show. It's 1/3 finance, 2/3 atheism, and I have a much shorter fuse in talking to Christians, so that's why Tracie will be the drop button person, because I probably end all the calls in seconds. So hopefully it goes well. But yeah, I've been involved with the atheist movement for about 11, 12 years. I've been on the board of the Reason Rally, Atheist Alliance International, Secular Student Alliance, and I've been promoting and sponsoring and donating money to conferences all across the United States for about 10 years. And so it ended up being my business, which is retirement planning. My niche is the atheist movement. So that's why I talk about finance and atheism on the show. So if you're interested in either one of those, you can come check out my show.
And it is interesting.
Well, you're very kind.
I'm not like a big financial person, but I know that whenever I talk to you about it, it's always interesting. I always feel completely ignorant and then walk away thinking that I learned something, and then probably a year later I don't remember it. But I should watch the podcast then.
It's kind of like we're the corollaries of each other, because I talk about numbers really fast and Tracie kind of glosses over, and then she was explaining to me when a gerund is a verb and not a verb earlier before the show started.
Well, gerund is never a verb, but
yeah, see, exactly. Yeah. I couldn't even remember it 5 freaking minutes, so I don't know what she was talking about, and nor do I care. So the beautiful thing about talking, if I use the wrong there, nobody notices.
That's right.
So
was it there, or there?
There, yeah. I'm good. They all sound the same to me.
Okay. So yeah, I just had a few. I know that people always ask the same questions to people when they're skeptics on a show. They're always like, how did you become a skeptic? But I'm not going to ask you that, because everyone always asks that. And the only thing I'm going to say is, you already told me the story yesterday. The one thing that was
make up a new one.
Funny was that I guess you said your minister at one point, when you were having trouble believing, basically just told you, just go ahead and do the thing.
I was in confirmation class in the Methodist Church, and in the South they call them atheists. But the Methodists in confirmation class, and I told the minister that I really didn't feel comfortable standing in front of a great big audience and swearing for all of my life that I was going to be a Christian and a Methodist. And so we had to have a meeting. We had spent an entire hour talking about it, and that was the most awkward hour of my life. And yes, his pants stayed on. But he eventually said, just do it. Yeah, thank you. There's a little delay out there. Just do it for your parents. And I thought, do it for my parents? Isn't this true? Isn't this matter to my soul and my eternal salvation? Shouldn't that be important? And it really stuck in my head at the age of 13. How can I, as a 13-year-old, ask an innocent, what I thought simple question, and someone who's 40 and wears a nice dress, can't answer the question. I mean, they finished high school, I assume. They did college. They did seminary school. Now, that's a funny name, seminary. But they have all this education, and they can't answer what I thought was a really simple question. And at the same time, when I was having those questions, I was watching this show, what was it called? Cosmos. And so every Sunday, I'd go to church school, and then I think it was Wednesday night on PBS, I'd watch Cosmos. I'm like, the more I learn about it, the weirder it gets. The more I learn about it, the more amazing it gets. And so by the time confirmation class was over, I said, I'm done. I'm an atheist at the age of 13. And kind of ignored it for a while until I happened to live for 2 years in Arkansas. It's the state below Missouri. I always pronounce it wrong. And I realized what it would be like if religion ran the government. And I decided at that moment that if I was not part of the solution, I was by default part of the problem. So that started my involvement in my activism, and I've been doing that for over a decade now.
Yeah.
There's a long answer for you.
In Texas, we have that feeling, too, of we have some thought about what it might be like if religion ran the government.
And I just saw, again, the Texas government is trying to promote a law that would allow teachers the freedom of their conscience or something like that, freedom of being able to teach creationism to the hapless, innocent little children that think that Santa Claus is real. But it's all good. Oh, sorry, spoilers.
All right, so my first actual question was, why finance?
Wow, that's a good one. I wish I'd studied. When I was growing up, I knew that my dad was a stock-picking genius. And he'd always tell us about the stocks that he picked that doubled, tripled, went up 5 times, 10 times. And when I came back from my first year of college, he sat me down and he says, all right, I'm going to show you where all the money is, so in case anything happens to me, you can take care of your mom and your other brothers. So, I get the mysteries, the secrets of how he makes all this money. And I'm a very analytical and data-driven person, so this is before spreadsheets. But I started, on paper, I'm not on a computer. I started calculating his return every year and found out that he was underperforming the stock market. So he's buying and selling all these stocks, and I have this image of him being this super genius stock picker. Here's the market. Well, here's his results. I'm like, what is that? And so now that, in skepticism, he remembers the hits and he forgets the misses. We don't want to admit that we suck at something. And it's something like 90% of drivers say they're better than average. Well, they're not. I just drove on the roads in Texas. They're not. So I was fascinated, well, how does one money? What's the right way to do it? And it started me on this lifelong experience of trying to figure out how can I take the little bit of money that I have and turn it into more money. And it's a weird thing that my goal wasn't necessarily to be rich, although that appears to be an fortunate consequence of it, but it was more I was driven by fear of being poor.
I understand.
My parents grew up, my dad was born in 1930.
Yeah.
So he would tell the stories, and I thought as a kid he was joking.
No.
He'd talk about walking along the train tracks and picking blackberries and blueberries and stuff and selling them door to door so they could get a nickel or a dime and buy a loaf of bread. And I thought, that's pretty funny. No, it really happened. He would go to the local church and shoot down pigeons so they could have meat. And I thought, well, that's useful. The building serves some purpose. But so, he has all these stories about that, and I thought to myself, I don't want to ever do that. And I've seen other relatives and relatives on my wife's family that they work their entire lives and they make investing mistakes, horrifically bad investing mistakes, and then they end up getting $12,000 or $14,000 or $15,000 a year from Social Security, and they live in a single wide, literally under the power lines, and that's all they've got. And that scared the shit out of me. So I don't want to be in that situation. So, the first step of how to money, and most of this stuff is so incredibly simple, it's ridiculous, but you have to spend less than you make, right? The part that I help most with is part 2 is how to invest the money. And then the third part, unfortunately, is it takes time. I get people all the time that want to do it fast, want to make money quick. And the phrase I tell people, if you've ever known anyone that's always trying to strike it rich, did you ever notice they're always trying? If it worked, they wouldn't keep trying. They would be rich. But always trying to strike it rich just generally doesn't work. I tell people I'm kind of the tortoise and the hare. I'm the tortoise in financial world. It's slow and steady and it wins the race in the end, but it's not particularly exciting. So you
Okay.
have to cut me off because I'll do this all
that
day.
explains it. And then What made you connect this to atheism and skepticism?
Well, and I think when I spent that time in Arkansas and I saw what government run by religion was, it terrified me. And I said that I have some money. I don't necessarily have time, but I can donate to a conference. My first big donation was to Skepticon 3, and they had 500 people had signed up. It was a free convention, but they had 500 people signed up. And when everybody shows up, they literally pass the hat or a plate and ask for donations to cover all the bills. But they had a big waiting list. But the room that would hold more people was going to need a whole bunch of money. So I underwrote that convention with several thousands of dollars so they could get the big room and pay for that in advance. And then when people came, they got donations. And so that conference went from 500 people to 1,200 people. So an extra 700 people got to go to an entire weekend-long skepticism, atheism conference because I happened to have some money. And so that's still one of my best investments ever. And so I started doing that because I think that if we got rid of religion, and that's not going to happen, but if we shrunk its influence, we could start solving a lot of our problems that we're blinded to today because religion tells us this or that is wrong despite the evidence. And so I did more and more conferences. And then one of them said, well, you're donating money, why don't you get a table? And I thought, what the fuck does a finance guy do with a table at an atheist convention? That's stupid shit. But I would go to so many a year that I was getting bored hearing the speakers because often the speaker will give the same talk multiple times. And so I had a table and I would talk to people, and you know by now that I love to talk. I did find out there's something I like more than talking, hearing the sound of my own voice. But
I think you're hitting your mic a little.
Oh, we don't want to do that.
It's okay.
So I did a bunch of these conventions, and someone finally came up to me and said, can I hire you? And I'm like, I didn't think I'd actually make money doing this. I was just having some fun. And so then another person and another person. And of course, at some point I started doing podcasting. And now the Phil Ferguson show, I think was a month or two ago, it was the biggest month. I had like 65,000 listens in a month, which is a fraction of what this gets. But a lot of people listen to it, and it's information and knowledge about how to money, how markets work, how, like example, I spent 25 minutes going over the mathematics of an annuity and how it rips you off. Because people kept asking me, I listen to people like Susie Orman or Dave Ramsey or Bob Brinker, and they say don't buy annuities, but why not? Well, I know they don't explain it because it's complicated math. So I spent 25 minutes going over the math, and I was terrified that I was lose my entire audience, but it was one of my most highly rated shows. Like the other thing I'll tell people is don't prepay your mortgage. Don't save for your kids' college. Don't use socially conscious mutual funds. And it's all based on the mathematics, so I'll do a segment explaining how that works. So there's some for
Okay,
you.
so basically what you're describing is that how most people end up in a sponsorship situation for a conference because they have something that is like symbiotic to the conference. So they've got a product that sells that it would appeal to an atheist audience. But in your case, you were just simply wanting to sponsor.
I was just donating.
And then it sort of rolled into, why don't you table? And you're like, table what? I am a finance advisor.
Anyone that has a business, you get these phone calls where someone says, we'll sell you a list of 1,000 names. They're pre-qualified. It's by age, by income, by the size of their portfolio, and you can send out pamphlets and have them call you.
Okay.
Well, I tell them I don't need any of that information because I cannot keep up with the number of people that call me now. So I've had to keep raising my minimum, which is not what I want to do, but I can only work so many hours in a week, and that's really unfortunate. So the nice thing about the show is that they can listen and learn about how investments work.
Sure.
And it's usually the first third is investment stuff, and then the second third, I might have on someone really cool and hip, like maybe Tracie Harris will finally come on my freaking show.
Oh, that's a horrible thing. It's horrible.
We'll have fun.
I need to tell that story though. I was told that I had to host. That was horrible.
Yes.
I was told that I get to host
Yeah. You have the
show
honor
with Phil, and I went on Facebook to message Phil, and I realized we're actually not friends, and I thought we were. So I go on and I just go ahead and message Phil, and I think I sent you a friend request at the same time.
Yep.
And as I go to message, it comes up and I see that there's already a message to me from Phil, and it's from 2015. And it's him asking, would I be on the podcast after I had met him at a conference, and I completely didn't get it because Facebook does the other messages.
Yeah.
And so I never saw it, and so I felt like an absolute heel.
And I couldn't get on your friend list because you had 5,000 already. You
I don't have
capped out.
It's not true. It caps out if you have people waiting. Anyway. We're not getting into Facebook logistics. Next question.
Oh, there's more?
Oh, I wanted to know. I really liked it. I mean, it's up to you if you want to tell it, but I liked your story about the car purchase.
The car, like why investing
Yeah.
in? So the story I tell is that I've been doing this for 21 years. After I was doing it for about a year or two, and just there was a few friends that hired me, I was having my car worked on. This is the one you're talking about?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I guess it was the one where you were buying a car.
Oh, with the interest?
Yes.
Oh, that's a totally different story. Okay. So recently I bought a new car. It's a Prius Prime 2017. Yes, I'm screaming liberal. Gets 25 miles on electricity, which is very cool. And I'm sitting in, after I talked to the salesperson, I'm sitting with the finance person. That's the really scary one in the dealership, by the way. And they said, Toyota has a special. They'll borrow the money to you, lend the money to you. Thank you.
You're the financial guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Lend, borrow, it's these
Whatever they
complicated
do.
terms.
So it's 1.9% for 5 years. And I said, how about for 6 years? He goes, no, Toyota doesn't do that. And I go, well, I want to borrow the money for 6 years. And he says, well, this other bank will do it for a slightly higher rate, let's say 2.8% instead of 1.9 for 6 years instead of 5. I said, that sounds great. Let's do that. Hitting my microphone, so sorry. Let's do that. And so he prints it all out and he hands it to me and he says, well, now your monthly payment is going to be a little lower. Does that make you feel better? And I go, well, I don't care what the monthly payment is. And he's like, why did you want to borrow the money longer? I said, I could pay $35,000 in cash for this car right now. I'm very, very lucky. I'm very blessed that I could do that. He's like, well, why don't you just pay cash for the car? I said, it has the truth in lending statement. I said, see here what I'm going to pay in interest over the next 6 years, about $3,500 at 2.8%. If instead I take that $35,000 and I invest it in the stock market, I make $3,500 on average. Now, it might go down. I'm taking some risk, but it might go up. But odds are, if you do this over your entire lifetime, you will make about 10% a year in the stock market. So I'll make $3,500, $3,500, $3,500, and I'll do that for 6 years plus compounding. So the $35,000 might turn into $60,000 or $65,000, and I do all of that by borrowing $3,500 for you. And he's like, oh my God, no one's ever explained that before. So these are kind of the things that I talk about on the show, and like with the don't save for college, people freak out when I say that, don't save for college. Now, there's exceptions to every one of my guidelines, but for most people, don't save for college, and there's a lot of reasons, but one of the examples I give people is, if you've ever been on an airplane with a child, and the stewardess, hostess, flight attendant says if the oxygen masks drop down, you should put on yours first, because if you have any difficulty putting one on your child, they're not going to be able to help you. You have to take care of yourself first. And it's the same thing with retirement savings. When someone calls me at the age of 55 and says, we just finished paying for our third child to go through college, we're 55 and we're ready to start saving for retirement, you're screwed. I mean, unless you start saving half of what you make every year, starting at 55 is not going to work. That's the third part of how to money. You need time. So that's part of the logic behind that.
I thought that was a good story, because that was one of the things I like about your stories is they show the sort of counterintuitive nature of how money can work. Like what somebody might think of as the thing to do may not be the thing to do. Like paying cash for the car so that you're not paying interest
Right.
May not be the thing to do if you have the money. Like you say, it depends on what situation you're in. But if you had the money and you could put it down on the car, then you could invest it.
Right. And so like when people say prepaying their house, they'll save a lot of money on interest. That's true. If your option was to prepay on my house or spend the money on a boat, prepaying your house is a really good fucking idea. But if your option is prepaying on the house or investing that money for the next 20, 30, 40 years, you'll make wildly more in the market. Even if you only make 8 or 9%, but the norm is 10, you're borrowing money that's tax deductible at 4. You may effectively be paying a rate of 3% to borrow it. It's real simple. 10 is bigger than 3. And you can make way more money in the long run.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing. I mean, when he asked me last night, would it be better to retire with less money and no mortgage payment, or with more money and a mortgage payment? And I was like, I don't know. It depends on what the numbers would be. So it was a weird thing because in my mind I had always thought about the idea of wanting to pay off the house so I don't have the mortgage payment in retirement. And he's like, but what if you could make more money and then you still have the mortgage payment, but you have a lot more money?
And you have a very common thing because you're over 35 that you remember.
Just barely.
Yeah. You remember the late 70s and early 80s when a mortgage rate might be 12, 14, 16% on your house. And when you're paying 16% to borrow money, you want to pay it off as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah.
But when you're borrowing money at 4%,
and matter of fact, rates are low now.
Yeah, I have every expectation rates are going to go up. I'm not really big at predicting the future, but this is pretty easy to see because the economy is growing despite politics. And the people who are in charge of the Fed have told us that rates are going to go up because the economy is strong. If you have a house now and you can refinance it, or you're thinking about buying a house, there's a good chance that interest rates are going to be 1/2 to 3/4 to maybe even a full point higher next year. So think about how you manage your money and what interest rate you pay. You might want to refinance.
Let's see if I have anything else. I think that was...
I didn't know there'd be a quiz.
No, that was it. That was all I had. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about or discuss that...
I think let's have some fun and talk to some, what do they call them? Theists.
Callers.
Yeah, callers. Theists.
The callers.
And they can tell us what they believe and why.
All right.